Hey Kara, thanks for the email update and the videos. You aren't on the Book of Faces, but I did a video review for a few lifters last week, and then I asked them in our Facebook group if they liked it, and the ones that got it liked it, and the ones that didn't get one are interested in getting one. So for this week, I've been pretty much doing it for anyone who sent me videos. Going to do a video review just so you kind of like see and hear what I'm looking at when I'm looking at your videos. So I have your videos here and your training file here. So we'll go one by one. We'll start from the bottom with the deadlift and just take a look at how everything is going. I haven't looked at any of the videos yet. So that was the 395 deadlift. Everything looked pretty solid there. So that's kind of when the bar breaks the ground, maybe a little before. So here looks good. Hips are higher than the knees, shoulders are higher than the hips, back is straight, arms are slightly angled back and locked out, and then head's in a pretty neutral position. You tend to throw your head back like farther up in the movement when it gets hard, which is fine. Um, or if you like you can kind of keep it down here. It'll be a little bit safer just on like the neck and upper back if you're not cranking it back like that. So if we want to nitpick your deadlift and try and look for some kind of improvement that we can make, maybe after run nationals and stuff, is with the lighter weights. Once we go back to doing some rep work, is kind of keeping the head a little bit more neutral, just so we don't injure anything here. But this all looks solid right here. Bar path looks good. Looks like pretty smooth rep, even though it is heavy. You marked it as a 9. I'd say maybe a 9, maybe slightly easier, maybe like an 8.5. Or maybe you could have done a second rep if you fought through it, which kind of makes sense for 91%. And we're fatigued from squatting the day before, that you're pretty much going to get 3 reps with 91%. And that would be kind of somewhere around where we would open with in a competition. Let's go to the next video. Look at 152.5 for 4 reps. So same thing, positioning looks good, bar path looks good, speed looks good. The one thing that can maybe fix in the future is just that position of the head, kind of when you halfway up and the weight gets hard. But all around, deadlifts have always looked good, and they're looking good right now going into the competition. And you mark those as an 8, and that looks good too. Looks like you could have done a couple more reps, maybe even a third rep if you really pushed it. So RP on that one looks good. Let's go to our squat, 115 for 4. So since you have practice with squat on flat shoes for a long time, and then before that with the heeled shoes, and now we're trying to heel, it's fine if you're kind of going back and forth right now, trying to figure out which one feels best for your hips and everything like that, since you have enough practice in both where you can do it. Hopefully we can kind of figure out this week or next week what to go with and just stick with it for this last few weeks of training, so that in competition we have everything planned out and ready to go. So if the flats are feeling better on your hips, then maybe we'll just try that again for this week and see if you can kind of stick with that. Depth looks good right there. Knee position looks good, doesn't shoot back too fast. The bar drifts forward a little bit, but nothing too big. I mean, we knew about that already right there. Bar goes forward a little bit and then comes back. On the way up, it goes pretty straight. Overall, again, just like it does, look like a pretty good set as far as positioning and bar speed. And let me watch it again, see what I think about the RPE. I'd say maybe it was like a 8.5, and you marked as an 8, so we pretty much agree there. I try and think of an 8 as like how fast an opener would move, and I thought your last rep looked maybe just slightly slower than what your opener would move, so that's why I said 8.5, but A is pretty much the same thing. So that was good. Let's take a look at some bench press. So this looks like a good setup right here. Feet are pulled back nice and far. Knees are lower than the hips. So this reduces the chance of the butt coming up off the bench. And then we got a nice arch going here. Then we got the bar over the shoulders. You can't see the head, but it looks like the head's touching the bench, and we never have any issues with that. Let's take a look at the rep. And that looked like a pretty good pause to me. It moved a little bit, maybe here, like one side sank a little bit, this right side, but you still stopped on the chest. Looked like a good pause. Drove it back towards the rack. That looked good. And that was pretty fast. I'd say maybe that was like a 7, and you have a 7.5. So that looks good to me. Let's take a look at the triple. So that was a good pause. That looked like a good pause. And that one looked like a good pause, and that looked easy. On the third one, you can kind of see you dropped it down a little bit more than the other two, which is what you did your single. So these two, you stopped it well. This one, oh sorry, that was the third rep right there. That one was perfect. This one, the right side dipped a little bit, and then the third one, it went down right there a little bit more. So it's like you should be stopping here, but there it dips down a little bit more. So that was what happened with your single too. So I guess once you get a little bit fatigued, you kind of rest in your chest a little bit more and relax, versus the first rep where it's a lighter weight and it's really easy for you. You kind of pause it better, keep everything tight. So you just got to kind of focus on mimicking this where you're really squeezing the bar with your hands as hard as you can, squeezing your shoulder blades together as hard as you can, and just staying tight and resting it on your chest rather than relaxing and letting it sink and letting one side of the bar drop down. But overall, the speed on those are all really good. And I would say again, that one's like a 7 too, and you have a 7 there as well. So bench is looking really good. Deadlift technique and everything is looking good. It's just slow because we're doing a very high percentage, 91%. And squat, I mean, I know you're having the issues with the hip and going back and forth with the shoes and everything, but still, it's a pretty good set. We got some volume in and an 8 RP, so we can go a little bit heavier. So I will go and enter in the numbers now, in the shared file here for this coming week, based on these RPs and the videos that you sent to me. Going over to email, we already talked about the squat. You kind of have to figure out right now with which shoes, if the flat shoes are best, then go with those, and let's try and make it through the competition with those shoes. Yeah, back is always good on deadlifts. You don't really have an issue on deadlifts as far as technique. Bench did look super good. And then here, we'll see what happens when we get there. But I mean, there's different things you can do. So after you compete, so that's 10:24. So let me see if I have that on the schedule. So basically, you would compete this week, and then you would deload this week, and then you would normally start your training back here, with the intro week, kind of easing back into it. But you have the surgery there anyway. So what you could do is just you can screw around and do something for fun if you want for your training, or you can just take another week off, and then you'd be off for 7 or 10 days, and then you take this one off too, and then so maybe you'd actually start your regular training here. So instead, you would just take 3 weeks deload instead of 1 week, which is fine because that gives you a little bit more recovery, helps out with your hips and everything like that from all this training that you've done. And you can spend time screwing around with different stuff if you want to, try out different exercises, try out the different shoes or different stands, something like that. You just mess around and not worry about doing like any kind of hardcore training because you have the surgery, and then after surgery we recover, and then we'll ease back into training here in November if we need to. So, but we'll see what happens when we get there. We're still over here, so we'll focus on these last 3 weeks of heavy training and then the light week before we compete. All right. Hope that helps and hope you like this video.